Recording in progress.
Let's continue on this theme about choice and busing. So more than 15 years ago, when the Pinellas County school system moved from busing for desegregation to controlled choice, it had, at best, a busing challenge, at worst, a busing disaster. Because there were buses running helter-skelter all across the county with one kid going from this home to this school miles and miles away. How would that not happen in the system you're proposing right now?
So what we've looked at in other states is that they do a 30-minute route, and that might be something we consider. We might have to consider something that's a 20-minute route, and it is by minutes and not by miles, because some of the states, because it's statewide, there's parts that are more rural. And so, we'll have to get more into it. But one of the things is, we also have to go through and make sure of the wasteful spending. There's other things other than just buses. There are states that have already implemented things like Ubers and Lyfts. Now, I wouldn't necessarily want that for an elementary school student, but maybe these are things we can consider for the high school students. But I think also having more bus stops, paying our bus drivers more, retaining them, having different start times and end times, it's been done. So it definitely can be done again. Now, have I looked at every single detail on how to implement that right now? Not at this point. We have reached out to many different states other states that have implemented this, and other counties that have implemented in those states. But I think it absolutely can be done. Florida is not an anomaly. Pinellas County is not an anomaly. We just need to make it a priority to do.
Right, but this county in which you're running for a school board seat did try it more than 15 years ago. The budget was broken by the amount of money spent on fuel and transportation. They moved away from it back to community schools at the first opportunity. So tell me again how this is going to work.
They were busing kids from public schools only. So that it was busing them across the county from one public school to another public school with the intention of desegregation, really. But
no. I'm talking about controlled choice after busing for desegregation ended.
I'm sorry?
I'm talking about busing for controlled choice after busing for desegregation ended. The county did that for a few years, then moved away from it because the cost in fuel and in time and in wasted students' time moving from one part to another of the county was just overwhelming, and they moved away from it, went back to community schools plus magnets and fundamentals.
Community schools plus magnet and fundamentals?
Yeah.
They don't provide busing to fundamental schools.
I didn't say they did.
I didn't understand what you said then.
They moved away from a system of controlled choice where you could pick any school you wanted and be bused to it, back to a system of neighborhood schools, magnets for which busing is not provided except Tarpon Springs. And then also, not magnets, fundamental schools, and then magnet schools for which busing is provided if you live 2 miles outside the zone. And so you still, to this day, have kids in North County riding a bus, 45, 50 minutes to get to PCCA or vice versa.
Yeah, well, I mean, that already goes against my point of looking at the mile radius. We can't take them from South County all the way up to North County more than likely, but we could figure out a, not mile radius, minute to travel. That's what I just said.
Well, let's move on to accountability. So if you favor more school choice, how do you ensure that the schools parents are choosing are providing for their kids' education, the meeting state standards that the kids are learning to read in 3rd grade, that are meeting state standards in other grades in a way that a traditional public school has to under state law? How would that happen at a private school, a public charter school, or a home school, or a parochial school? What accountability would you suggest or would you require?
Do you mind telling me how the public school, you said the public school has to address based on state standards?
Yeah, they have FSA and they have other end of course testing. So they do have to.
But they're not meeting that, right? They're not meeting it. Kids continue to low perform, which is why we have 75% of 3rd graders who cannot read at a 3rd grade proficiency. So you make the comment about accountability that the public schools have to have accountability, but at the end of the day, they've been low performing for many years in
Is
District
that
7
not accountability though? Right now, you're telling me 75% can't read at a third grade level. I think that number's high, but you're telling me that, and you know that because they are accountable. How would those private schools, how would those religious schools be held accountable so you'd know that same thing at those schools to which you would send tax dollars?
So you're saying that as long as you have the information, that's holding them accountable, even though if they continue to be low performing year after year? I'm just asking for clarification.
Maybe I'll try to clarify this question. How would you hold private schools and religious schools accountable if they're getting tax dollars under your system?
Parents hold private schools accountable. If the school performs well and the parents like the school, then they continue to keep their child there. If the school does not perform or the parent does not feel that their child is learning, they pull that child out. The private school loses that funding, and they need that funding to sustain their budget. So I trust and advocate for the parent's choice for their child, for them as being the parent, for them as being the taxpayer. I totally support that. As far as charter schools go, charter schools are held to the same accountability. They take the same state standardized testing. In fact, charter schools have even more accountability at this point, because if they get two low failing grades in a row, they are shut down. Traditional public schools can continue to get failing grades and not shut down.
Would you advocate for public schools to get failing grades to be shut down?
I don't advocate for that, no, but I was just addressing the question of the accountability and the testing.
Well, one more question on accountability while we're there. So you're saying the parents will hold the school accountable by voting with their feet. They'll pull their child out if they don't feel the child is getting a good education. Taxpayers part of this too, because parents are not the only taxpayers. All of us sitting here pay taxes to public schools. Mm-hmm. How do we hold them accountable? We're simply letting those parents take that money and decide for themselves this is the best spending. What if we don't agree? What if we think those schools are actually not doing a very good job?
Well, then I would say, what if those taxpayers don't agree with the traditional public schools who aren't doing a good job?
You vote the people out of the school board is what you do.
But it's been not performing for years. These are not like 1 year, 4 year, 2 years. We have to be open to people making their own choices with their children and what is best for their child. We can't oppose it just because we're against the choice that how they choose to raise their child. You're still getting money sent to the traditional public school. You're still getting that sent there. So if that child is getting educated somewhere else, why do we oppose that?
I guess we don't oppose that. What we want is a level of accountability so the taxpayers know they're getting their money's worth. And I know you keep coming back to, well, public schools, they're not getting their money's worth. Okay, that's fine. Put that aside for a second. But what we're trying to get at is charter schools and private schools. How are we going to make sure that they are being held accountable?
Okay. So again, we can't put that aside because
no, we can in this argument actually, because it's taxpayer money that is going to those charter schools and in some cases the private schools. So
no, we can't.
What we're trying to figure out is how would you hold them accountable?
I don't believe we can put that aside because we need to look at what is going on. Okay. And
we all just to be clear, we all agree that there's certain public schools that need to be better. I mean, you're talking speaking to the choir on that. But part of your questionnaire was very much about school choice, and school choice can be great, but school choice is we could give you examples of it not being so great. So what we're trying to ask you is, if you're on the school board, how are you going to hold charter schools accountable?
Okay. And we also need to make the distinction between charter and private schools. This gets lumped. They get lumped in.
We know the difference. We're very much aware of the difference.
So charter schools have to take the annual standardized test. There's no difference in that. So I don't even understand then why that question comes up.
So let's move to the private schools. Okay. You've said that private schools should get some taxpayer funding, basically, whether it's and school busing and things like that, how are we going to help? How will the school board, if you're on it, hold them accountable? Or what should be done? How should the state hold them accountable?
No, I think the parents hold them accountable.
Even though they're getting taxpayer money. So just it's entirely up to parents.
Those are taxpayers who attend the school.
Okay. Good enough. We got another interview in a few minutes, so let me just tell you about where we're at in our process. We're about 2 weeks into we're in the second week, I should say, of interviewing folks, not just for school board races, but for all kinds of races. So we're still sort of in the research interviewing process. We will start publishing recommendations in the second half of July. I don't know when the Pinellas School Board ones are going to come out because we still have to interview people. So I can't tell you an exact day is what I'm telling you. But we'll try to get them done as soon as possible because I know people start to vote early and do all that type of thing.
No,
so,
yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not naive to where my endorsement level with TBT stands, but I'm going to come for the interview.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you participating in the process. The other thing I'll tell you is you may have already talked to some of our news reporters. We're the opinion side of things. The news folks, they don't have any influence over our recommendations, and we have no influence over their coverage of the Pinellas County school races. We try to keep things very separate. So you may have already, as I say, talked to one of our reporters. If not, one of them may call you. But thanks very much. We appreciate it. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.